Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all well. Thank you for joining us for this very sort of informal chat that we're going to have today. So just to give you a bit of background, my name is Suzy Beaumont. I am a personal development consultant and founder of Change Your World. And this is Kamalyn Kaur. She's a mindset coach, a psychotherapist, and she runs Key Therapies. And we were both, we got to know each other probably about 2 years ago now, because Kamalyn has been a regular coach in my daily coaching group, Change Your World Every Day, which I encourage people to take up a personal development practice, go to work on themselves and really start to improve themselves and transform their lives. Me and Cam have worked together for some time, and recently we were invited by BBC Radio Scotland to do this regular winter wellness feature from January right through to March. So we're going to be on Radio Scotland every Monday morning, probably around about 11 o'clock, just talking about very different subjects to help your health, well-being and happiness. And we were on Monday to talk about Divorce Day, because this is the time of year when we see, solicitors see a surge in divorce cases and divorce applications. And I'm sure, Kamalyn, as a therapist, you see lots of people coming to you looking for, advice on their relationships. And we were able to do I think it was like a 10-minute segment trying to give sort of tips and advice.
Squeeze everything in.
On a massive subject. And we thought, you know what, let's get together, just do another Zoom call and do a bit more in depth. So it's going to be a bit of a free-for-all. We've got some focus questions that we'll ask, but we're just going to chat about relationships. If you've got any questions that you would like to ask, put them in the chat box or raise your hand if you want to come on camera or audio and ask those questions. This is being recorded and we will put it out later on our social media channels. So just bear that in mind if you don't want your face all over social media. But you can ask the questions in the chat box and I will ask them on your behalf. I don't have to say your name. So if you want to remain anonymous, and remember, if you are talking about people that are close to you, just keep the details anonymous as well, so we're not exposing anybody's privacy or confidentiality. So welcome to everyone that has joined us. So first of all, Kamalyn, why do you think there is more of a surge in divorce and separation at this time of year than any other?
Right, so I think it's really just the pressure of Christmas and New Year, and it all builds up and it lets people realize that something isn't right or something isn't working or something needs attention. So I think that usually, because Christmas is such a stressful time of the year anyway for a lot of people, and I think if there's already cracks there in your relationship, Christmas is going to be the make or the break. It's like when people have a baby, it's either going to make your relationship or it's going to break your relationship, because any event in your life, any life event that puts extreme pressure on your current situation is always going to result in a make or a break situation. So it's not a surprise that there is a surge in divorce rates after Christmas and New Year. But the other thing is, a lot of people will start earlier on in the year, maybe reviewing their relationship, thinking about their relationship, questioning whether that's the relationship they want to be in, but they will wait until after major events or occasions or festivities are out the way. So even if somebody has maybe started thinking about it at a certain point of the year, they'll wait for Christmas and New Year's to get over and done with, and then start afresh the next year. So there is a combination of things, but I think most of the time it's just this big huge festival that needs to get out the way. There's too many people there, too many family members who are going to ask questions, and people don't like to be asked questions about things that are raw and painful, so they will wait until that main festival is out and over with, and then it means that in January they can start afresh. And it all ties in with the New Year goals, a fresh start, new beginnings. So it's then a mindset change as well that takes place, and usually results in people taking action over situations that are already on their mind. So it's not a new thing. It's not that everybody gets to January and they're all of a sudden, oh my God, my relationship's not working. That's already there in the forefront of your mind. Christmas just accelerates that process.
Yeah, there's often a lot of other dynamics,
factors that
And like you say, the festive season. And I think there's this pressure to play happy families, to be the perfect families. You know, you see all these posts on social media where people are like, oh, look at us all loving it all.
We're so happy.
Perfect Christmas present. And you're just like, really? Like, there's some people out there having a proper EastEnders Christmas and all fighting and arguing and all the rest of it. And it does, you just put on that face, that front, going, just let us get through this. You're doing it for the kids, doing it for, you know, whatever reason. And then maintaining the facade. And then it's like, okay, can't do this. And I certainly, this is what we spoke about on Monday. I've been in that situation. I've been one of those stats where I was having problems in my relationship. You know, it probably should have ended 2 years previously, but I decided, thinking, okay, let's work on it. Let's work, you know, I was working on myself. I had an honest appraisal about my own behaviors and thinking, right, let me work on that before trying to change my partner. But, you know, he wasn't coming with me. And it got to the point where, you know, we went through Christmas, we were having the same arguments that I'd had the year before and the year before. And I thought, I just reached New Year and I just thought, I can't do this again.
Do this.
I cannot do this. I do not want to be in the same position this time next year. And I kept, you know, asked myself 3 questions. Can I accept this? And the answer was no. Can I change it? Well, I had tried every tactic in the book trying to change and improve the situation. It was a no. And it's like, do I want to continue living this way? And I didn't like the way the person I was turning into, because I was becoming angry, bitter, resentful. I was looking at my friends, they had their happy relationships, and instead of being happy for them, I found myself being jealous and negative and just like very, like, you know, they were like, oh, we're getting engaged. I was like,
good for you.
Brilliant. I'm so happy for you.
I know, and it's not because you're a bad person. No. It's just because when you yourself are not happy, everything around you is going to trigger off that pain that you're carrying inside you.
Yeah, and that was the thing. And I got to the point, I remember reaching New Year's Day and just thinking, I'm done. I actually, there was definitely a mindset shift that had happened. It was the time of year, and I remember just thinking, I need to get out of this. And I gave myself a 2-week window to have the conversation. And I'd had it by the 8th of January. The house went on the market in February. You know, we sold the house a month later. We'd moved out by May. Now, none of that was easy. My partner didn't want to separate. I felt like I was coming home every day, kicking the puppy, going, yes, this is still happening. You know, he was bereft and he was like, I'll change, I'll do this. And I was just like, I've heard it. And I felt, you know, difficult. You always think, you know, being the one that's been dumped is the hardest, but it's just as hard on the other person making that decision, because you do feel like you're kicking a puppy every day when somebody doesn't want to end the relationship, and it's horrendous for both people. It's not easy on either. But we will talk about how to separate in a more empowered way later on. What we want to focus on right now is how to maintain a healthy relationship. So let's start off, you know, and I mean, I don't want to just talk about romantic relationships. I want to talk about relationships in general. I mean, what are some tips to have a good, healthy relationship? What should we consider to nourish that relationship?
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of things, but I think if you were to really strip it back, it comes down to just some core values and qualities in a relationship. So the first thing is there needs to be mutual respect for each other. And by that, I mean as in treating somebody the way that they want to be treated, but also treating somebody in the way that you would want to be treated as well. So you can't have different rules and go be all like absolutely amazing with like family and friends and then come home and treat your partner like complete, like there's something that's like a piece of rubbish, because that's not nice, you know. So you need to, because people get into this habit really quickly, because when you're with somebody all the time, you start taking them for granted and you stop appreciating everything that they do. So it's really important to always engage and converse in a very respectful manner. That's the first thing. And by that, I mean, that respect means different things for different people. For some people, it's not swearing. For some people, it's actively listening to the person. For some people, it's about being heard, being valued, being cared for, being loved in a relationship. So you need to, as a couple, identify what does mutual respect mean for you in your relationship. And the second thing is healthy boundaries as well. So how do you want to be treated in that relationship, and what will that person say or do that will take you away from the way that you want to be treated. So you need to know when your boundaries are being breached. If you don't know how your boundaries are being breached, then a person can treat you any way they want, and you will not know what is making you feel a certain way, and you will not know why the relationship is not working. And I see this time and time again, where people will talk about other things. So they'll come to the sessions and they talk about work-related stress, but it is not work related at all. The stress is coming from that relationship in which you cannot speak without thinking 100 times whether that's going to cause a reaction in your partner or not. That's where your stress is actually coming from, because your partner is a ticking time bomb and you never know when they're going to actually explode. Work is just the trigger for that stress, but because the trigger is always so painful, it's
the
really
avoidance.
easy. Yeah, on the avoidance or the
it.
denial side. So it's easier to make it about that rather than deal with the big huge elephant in the room. So healthy boundaries are really important, because if you know how you want to be treated and you know what it feels like to be treated well, you will know straight away when somebody is not treating you the way that you want to be treated, and you can actually nip things in the bud a lot sooner. I'm not saying it's an easy process, but it becomes a lot clearer about what is acceptable and not acceptable when you have a healthy boundary. So that is the second thing I would say is really, really important to be able to maintain healthy relationships. And one of the other things is communication. I know everybody talks about it and it's so cliched and everything else, but we are creatures that are born to communicate. We have the luxury of having a language in which we can express how we feel, and we have words to describe how we feel. Why do we not use that? Why do we not use those words to express how we feel, instead of shutting down, withdrawing, or basically repressing or suppressing everything back in? Communication is really important. If something isn't working, or if something is making you feel unwell, or if something is making you feel angry or sad in the relationship, whatever the emotion is, you have to communicate it to the other person, as opposed to internalizing it. Internalizing a feeling will result in those knee-jerk reactions where people have tantrums, or they have mood swings, or they feel overwhelmed, or they have complete breakdowns, and then people will say, I don't even know why I'm crying, I don't even know what the big deal is, I don't know why I reacted, or I overreacted to the situation. It usually means there's something else bubbling underneath the surface that's needing your attention, and you're deliberately not giving it any attention.
What's the argument really about? And there's 4 things I want to pick up there, but I just want to say, because we've had new people joining as well, you know, feel free, if anybody's got any questions, if you're happy to come on camera or audio, raise your hand, and you know, we'll come to you and ask a question, or you can put a question in the chat box. But there was 4 points there that I want to kind of really unpick, because there was so much in what you said there. We talked about boundaries, communication, listening, and not taking the person for granted. So the first thing about boundaries. So my world is all about personal development. And I know that when I was having really toxic relationships and failed relationships, miserable relationships, it's because I didn't have boundaries. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what was important to me. I didn't know what my values were. So when people were trampling on them, and I was having that reaction, I didn't even know what it was. And I didn't know why, and I didn't know how to communicate it to somebody. So I would just have, you know, I would get angry with them and frustrated, and then, you know, complete and utter breakdown. So first of all, how do we start? You know, I mean, I'm a huge advocate. Go to work on yourself, personal development, get to know who you are, what your values are, what's important to you, and make sure you choose a partner where your values are in alignment with each other. You know, it's like, I'm trying to think of an example off my top of my head, would be like a total carnivore going out with a vegan. Now, I do know people that are in these relationships, and, you know, or maybe, you know, they've been both carnivores and one has turned vegan, and then, you know, that relationship has...
One example.
Yeah, well, I know, it's the only one that I can think of at the top of my head, but, or it might be another big one, is, you know, 2 people get together, they're really happy, you know, life is great, and then one wants kids and the other one doesn't, and they've got married and everything. And they've never even had this conversation. So really sort of establishing, getting to know yourself and who you are and what you want from your life, to get your own foundations right, so that you can choose a partner that is in alignment with that values. Of course, the challenge is if you find yourself in a relationship that you are deeply in love with somebody, you're married, you kids, and you're like, oh, we're 20 years down the line, we've never even had this conversation, we've realized our values are going in different directions. You know, what can somebody sort of do in those situations?
So are you talking about the latter situation where you're already in the relationship for a
Yeah,
long
if
period
you're
of
in the
time?
relationship, because we can work on ourselves before we get into a relationship. The prevention is always better than the cure. But
Yeah,
what if
yeah.
you are in a very established relationship and you're suddenly thinking, okay, we've built a life together, we've got children together, we've got, you know, joint parents, you know, like in-laws that we both got responsibilities for, and very much committed to this relationship, built this life, so therefore we don't want to separate. But you know, what is the healthiest way to maintain that relationship and get through that and work through it so that there is some common ground, I guess? Is it doable, or should you have an honest appraisal and sort of say, actually, what's better for all involved is to go our separate ways?
Yeah. I think if the relationship is healthy and you're respected in the relationship and you're heard, it's always worth giving it another chance. Obviously, if it's abusive, whether that's mentally, physically, verbally, psychologically, emotionally, then there's no, this is my personal opinion, I don't think there's any need for anybody to try and work on a relationship like that, because that is never going to get better. And why would you want to train your body and mind up to be in a toxic situation? So that is the only time I would say you walk away without any negotiation or without any chat. But the usual differences and indifferences and just having different views and opinions on things, that's natural, because we have that in our friend circles as well, don't we? Where like we all are different people and we have different views and opinions, but it doesn't mean we don't respect each other and value each other as people. So I think it's about, first of all, differentiating. Is the relationship healthy or is it toxic in the first place, right? If it's toxic, you might want to rethink whether you really want to be hanging about in that relationship. But if it is a healthy relationship and there's a mutual respect there and there's nothing really red flags, but it's just you've maybe just kind of gone in different directions, or you've just kind of got a little bit lost because of just life events, raising children, being busy with life, or whatever has been happening in your lives, then what you need to do is you need to regroup. That's what you have to do. You need to regroup and you need to anchor that relationship. And it all comes back down to communication again. Talk about what it is in that relationship that doesn't feel the same anymore. That's the first thing, right? What is it that you are feeling? Are you feeling lonely? Are you feeling sad? Are you feeling that you're not getting enough attention? Do you feel that you're getting too much attention? Is there too much time being spent together? Do you maybe want to do separate things? You know, just use that time to find out. Yeah, because sometimes that happens in couples, and I see this a lot when people have been married when they were really young, or they're married to a childhood sweetheart. They've grown up together and they've almost morphed into each other. So what happens is when it gets to later on in their stages of life, then what will happen is they actually don't know who they are. They don't know what kind of things they like. They don't know what they don't like. So it gets to a point where you've raised your children, everybody's doing their own thing, and then you're like, I don't really know what my purpose is now. So that can sometimes happen as well. So if what you're needing is space and you need some time just to figure out who you are and what you like and what you don't like, then that's what you would be asking for. But it all needs to start with a conversation, doesn't it? It needs to start with you both mutually in a respectful space, talking about what you think has changed, what you feel about that change, and what kind of things will help you to feel better or move away from how you're already feeling. And it can't be a conversation where it's just problem led, because this is where a lot of relationships go wrong. So the conversation is all just about, this is not working, you're not doing this, you're doing that, this is how you make me feel, you don't give me enough attention. It literally is just a complete attack, right? Now, anybody that starts a conversation like that needs to know that the other person has already shut off before you've even opened, right, your mouth now, because your facial expressions, your body language is ready to attack. So that person has already gone into fight and flight mode. So they're going into, okay, offer a solution, offer a solution, offer a solution, offer a solution mode. That's what is going on in the other person's head. They're not thinking about listening to you. They're thinking about, oh my God, I've done something wrong and I need to fix this, right? So this is why a lot of conversations don't go anywhere and they're not constructive, because everybody is on the defense and the conversation's not actually being had to resolve an issue. So you need to go in with a very solution-focused approach. So you already should technically have some kind of suggestions to offer in that conversation. So I'm feeling lonely in the relationship because you're working a lot, I'm always away. By the time we get home at night, we don't have a lot of time. So I was thinking maybe one day a week we should dedicate this much time to our relationship. So do you see, it needs to be something constructive, not just a complete, I'm going to drop a bombshell and then you need to pick up the pieces and fix it for me, because that's not fair.
That's a really important point to make about making time for the relationship, because when we go into autopilot, life is busy, we not only sacrifice ourselves and sabotage, you know, we're down the bottom of the pile, but our relationship, because you're like, oh, it'll always be there. And that's what you're saying about taking the relationship for granted, you know, and just always assuming that they'll be there, they'll get, you know, they're okay, they're fine, they don't need my attention right now, or I don't need their attention, you know. And it's like, you make time for your friends, you'll go and have coffee, go and see your pals, go to, you know, nights out, whatever. But when do you do the same for your partner? But at the same time, I've seen people going, I'm going to have, oh, we've got date night. And there's so much pressure around date night. It's got to be fun. It's got to be, and, you know, both of you, you know, you can be knackered, you can be exhausted. By the time you get to date night, you're just like, oh, do you know what? And it's like, actually make it smaller than that. Just do it in bite-sized pieces. It might be just 10 minutes of a respectful conversation, proper, you know, just going for a walk and just not, you know, not talking about anything serious, but just spending that time to connect again, just to really bond with each other and just giving each other that space and time. You don't even have to say anything. It's just being with each other. And don't make it into a big pressure of date night and we've got to have this wonderful, perfect, like I see people posting, oh yeah, date night, we're doing this. And you're just like, oh yeah, how
it's all lies, trust me.
It's all lies. They had a raging row at the end of the night.
It's just a load of nonsense, because as soon as that camera is off, it's just like, oh, back, everybody's on their phones again, having date night, not talking to each other, talking through the handset. So don't fall for that at all. And even that, you're right, it's just the pressure, right? It's all of these unrealistic expectations. First of all, who's got time to see each other once a week, right? I mean, like, a week flies in like that. To arrange a date every single week, right, on the same day and the same time, that's exhausting. By the time you recover from that date, you probably already need to start planning for your next date. So I think you need to be realistic about, right, if you're going to do this big, huge, extravagant date night, maybe just have that like once a month or whatever you want, like maybe once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks. But then in between that time, do more of those things that you were just talking about, which is going for walks a bit more regularly, maybe just being a bit more mindful and present when you're cooking or together, or you're spending a little bit of time. You don't have to sit in front of the TV with your handsets out, because that's not quality time. Maybe there's something else you could be doing together that actually involves you having a conversation and making eye contact with each other as well. So it doesn't, like you said, doesn't always need to be a big, huge, extravagant event. So be realistic about your expectations and be realistic about your lifestyle. If you're a busy person, trying to squeeze in date night once a week, that's you're setting yourself up for a fall there before you've even started working on that relationship.
Although I do remember when I was single and I was looking for my partner, my life partner, and I read a book called Calling in the One, and I do highly recommend it, whether you're single or you're in a relationship, and it's called Calling in the One by Katherine Woodward Thomas. And right at the beginning, you know, in the preface, she's saying, right, you know, this is a book designed for our activities for the next 7 weeks to help you call in the one. And it talks about, she starts off and she says, right, you need to dedicate 45 minutes a day to these activities. And my immediate reaction was like, oh, for God's sakes, I don't have 45 minutes.
It's a long time.
Oh I was just like, who the hell has 45 minutes a day? And then the next line was like, and if you find yourself saying you don't have 45 minutes, you don't have time for a relationship.
A relationship. I knew that was going to happen.
Damn it. And I was like, okay, right, okay. So really think about your own behavior and how committed are you to spending time with your partner. I'm just going to highlight to the new people that have joined. If you do have any questions, do put them in the chat box for us. We can keep them anonymous. You don't need to say who you are. But, you know, if you feel comfortable coming on camera or audio, just, you know, raise your hand and we can, you know, put a question to myself or Cam. The listening thing is a really important one as well, because we often don't truly listen. When our partner is speaking and they're voicing their need or the boundary that's been trampled on or whatever it is, we will be sitting there thinking about what we're actually going to say back and how we're going to respond and how we're going to defend ourselves. And, you know, we're not really actually just sitting there going, okay, what are they saying to me? And again, it's that thing when you are having an argument or a disagreement, or it's like, actually, what is it really about? I mean, when I'm arguing about the mess of the house or getting frustrated with that, it's actually not about the mess of the house, it's about the space, because I work from home and because we've been in lockdown on and off for the last 2 years and more people are in the house, there's kids in the house now, you know, I'm a blended family. So my home used to be a show home, used to be just me living here. I had all the space in the world, and then suddenly my partner moved in, kids moved in, father-in-law's here, there's a lot of people in the house, my sister comes to stay, and it's like, I need that space, and I get really stressed out, and I find myself arguing about, oh, this is a mess or that's a mess, and it's actually nothing to do with that. I just need a bit of time out, a bit of less distraction going on in the house. I need other people just to be quiet, you know, because that space isn't there. So rather, you know, I can't, you know, they're doing their thing. So rather than trying to change them, I said, right, well, let me remove myself from the situation. It's a space I need. So I'm going to go for a walk around the block and get that space, whether it's 5-10 minutes, 2 hours.
The entire day wandering about in the streets.
Exactly. So it's like, yeah, I'll be back in a week.
Just going to take my little hold on with me.
Exactly. So it is kind of really unpicking and really listening to the person and saying, okay, what is this really about? And when those arguments are happening, it's also recognizing, actually, is this a valid argument? Is this important? Or am I just tired? Am I exhausted? Am I crabby? Do I need a good night's sleep? Is that what's triggering this? So you know, we always put on the blame to somebody else. Oh, it's because you're doing this and because you're doing it. It's like, actually, what's the honest appraisal of my own behavior? Self-check yourself first. And that's the hardest thing to do. How would you, what's some tips you can give to sort of give people to stop, pause, self-check, you know, become more self-aware of their own behavior?
Yeah, so this is something that works really well, right? But it is going to be something that you have to train yourself up to do, because our natural instinct is to react. So if you're feeling emotional, or if you're feeling that not everybody feels emotional, some people just get this rage. And that's okay as well, because we all react to things absolutely differently. So if you're feeling certain kinds of emotion coming up for you in the home or in the relationship or directly as a result of somebody, always ask yourself the question, what am I reacting to? Am I reacting to the present situation, or am I reacting to something else that's going on inside me? Just doing that simple check-in with those questions, it will really, first of all, is going to make you more mindful. Secondly, it's going to make you really stop and think, right? And thirdly, it will probably stop you in your tracks if you're going to have an overreaction to the present situation, because a lot of the time we will not be reacting to the present situation. The present situation is a trigger for something else that's already bubbling underneath under the surface. So if you're asking yourself the question, am I reacting to the present situation? And sometimes it might be, sometimes you might come out of your room, your study, and be like in the best mood ever, and then you come out and you see something, you're just like, oh my God, what the hell? I just cleaned this room before I left. What's going on here? You know, so that is not an overreaction. That is you literally just reacting to that situation, in which case, obviously how you're feeling is justified, and you'll know the actual like thing that's making you feel upset. But if you're already emotional, or you're already running on adrenaline all that day, and then you go into the fridge and that milk's not there, or the milk's gone off, and you've literally had a meltdown, you know that that's not about the milk. The milk as the trigger, but what actually is going on, that you're either unhappy, or you're overworked, or you're overstretched, or you're maybe running around and doing too many things and not saying no to enough people and taking on far too much. And this is something I see all the time when I'm working with people. They'll come in really highly strung, and they'll be all stressed out, and they'll be really like, I just need this, and I need this, and this is happening at work, and this is going on. And then I just ask them just to stop, take a breath. What do you actually need at this point in time? Like, what does your body need right now? Forget about what everybody else needs from you. What does your body need? And you know what, Suzy? It's never a complicated answer. It's simple things like, I need to sleep, I need to stop, I need to be left alone, or I need some time to myself. Now, if you think about it, that's just basic human needs. Even babies are born with those needs, right? Like anytime a baby gets cranky, what's the first thing that a mother will say? Oh, it's bedtime, or it is a nappy change time, or it's time for them just to, or they're overstimulated, or there's too many people here. So this is not a bad thing. People think it's bad if you need time out. It's not. We are hardwired to have short bursts of energy, and then we need to be left alone sometimes just to re-energize and climatize back to who we actually are. So if you're feeling overwhelmed with what's going on in the world, which there's a lot going on in the world, or just in life in general, or in your own personal space, it's okay for you to say to people, look, I'm really sorry, I would love to meet up, but I need some time out, or I've got too much going on this weekend, or I'm going to have to say no to that. And it's okay for you just to take some time out just to regroup with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like your mobile phone, you recharge that regularly. Yeah, you need to recharge yourself. Look, that's what I want to pick up about taking space. When we sort of, if you say that to a partner may feel insecure about that and think that you're withdrawing away from them. But it's having confidence and courage in your relationship to know that it can withstand that if you allow it. And if it doesn't withstand that space, then the relationship was probably deteriorating anyway and going down that road. But there is this thing of, and maybe it comes down to attachment styles, which we haven't touched on, but when allowing somebody to have that space, do their own things, you know, do their own activities, their own, especially if you've lost sight of yourself in the relationship, because you will become a better person if you are able to have activities, different things, take you and bring something back into the relationship to talk about. You know, it can really energize a relationship to have separate interests and separate hobbies and activities. But there does seem to be that, you know, individuals can feel threatened by that. Like, you often see it when one of the a person in a relationship, they might go on a total get fit and they lose tons of weight and they're just like buzzing with confidence, and the other person feels a bit intimidated and threatened by that, you know, thinking, oh, I'm going to lose you now, you look great now, and you know, all that, you see that dynamic sort of playing out. So how, if somebody is sort of feeling threatened by the partner or the friend saying, look, I do need a little bit of space, I just want a bit of time out, you know, what advice can you give to that person if they are feeling that, like, that fear kick in, that anxiety?
Yeah, so any feeling that's triggered off inside us is there to tell us something, isn't it? So if you're feeling like that, what is going on for you? There's an insecurity inside you. So if you're not happy seeing your partner happy, or you're not happy seeing your partner losing weight or achieving their goals or reaching their goals, are you not working towards your goals? Are you maybe stagnant in your life? Are you maybe not wanting to push yourself as much as you know that you could be pushing yourself? So there's a trigger there. So if you're seeing somebody else doing well, So it's really interesting because you always know where somebody is mentally in their life based on how they react to other people's success and happiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a really important thing for everybody to remember. So if you look at somebody and you see them successful, you should be looking at them and thinking, what do they do? I want to do what they're doing, and I want to be like them.
Inspired by them.
Right? They should be inspired, like you should be inspired by them, or they should be inspiring you, right? If you're looking at somebody thinking, oh my God, I can't believe they're moving forward in life and I'm still here, that's not their problem now. That's your problem, and you need to take control of that and fix that, right? Because you can't hold somebody else back in order to make yourself feel better. That's not a healthy relationship at all. So if you're feeling like that, obviously communicate that to your partner. If you feel that they're maybe not spending enough time with you, or if you feel that they're maybe like detached from the relationship, communicate how you feel. But at the same time, if there's this fear or this insecurity or this nervousness arising now because your partner is moving forward in life, or they're growing and evolving and transforming into this person that is making you uncomfortable, then you need to really look at yourself and think, right, what's going on for me here? Why is this causing a reaction for me? How do I feel about their growth? And why do I feel like this as well? So it really is about looking at yourself and thinking about what's going on for me and why can I not be happy and supportive for my partner? It will usually, most of the time, and 90% of the time when I've worked with clients feeling like this, it will be because there's a lack of something in their own life. That's what it is. So that person's gain is reminding them and reinforcing them of the lack of whatever it is in their life.
I mean, this is it. I mean, fundamentally, the relationship we have with ourselves is the most important one, and we really need to work on getting that right before we can be in a good relationship with somebody else. And, you know, whether that's friendship, work colleagues, or a romantic relationship. So getting our own foundations right. I mean, nobody is ever perfect. We never ever will be. We're on an ongoing growing journey. So never think that you're striving to be perfect, because you'll never achieve it and you'll exhaust yourself and completely deplete yourself.
And there's no such thing.
There's no such thing, exactly. So what are some tools and techniques that you would advise about how you can develop that relationship with yourself?
Okay, so the first thing is definitely having some time out. If you're in a relationship, you don't have to do everything together, right? I mean, of course, it's great that you do, but it's really nice for you to actually be able to do things that involve you just doing or being by yourself, right? So whether that's going for a walk, whether that's exercise, whether that's gym, whether that's meditation, whether that's being with your friends, that's really, really important, because it helps you just find out who you are, who you're like without your partner, what kind of things you like doing, what kind of things you like eating. I've worked with women sometimes, right, that have been in relationships for so long, when they leave their partner, they don't even know what food they like. I mean, that's really simple, that, right? And you just automatically assume everybody knows that. And then when you break it down, they'll say things like, I don't know, like, I used to let my partner decide, or he just really just picked the restaurants, or he just picked the places. And you know, and when you look at it like that, that's a really simple thing, but that's not an issue until you're in a situation where you have to make that decision. Because up until that point, that person was not aware of the fact that they did not know that about themselves, because you don't know. Yeah, because you don't know what you don't know. So if you've been in a relationship where somebody's always decided, or somebody's always just taken the lead, or said to you, don't worry about it, I'll sort that out. You don't know anything, right? And when you're not in that relationship.
I know somebody that doesn't, she hardly ever drives because her partner does all the driving.
Yeah.
And, you know, she found herself single again, and, you know, she was suddenly like had real anxiety about driving because she hadn't been doing it regularly, and just a simple thing. So maintaining your own independence within the relationship is
so important. I actually worked with somebody that had been married for 30 years, and when she split up with the partner, she actually didn't know how to use bank card. And that caused her real anxiety, right? Because she genuinely didn't know how to use an ATM. She'd never had to take cash out, because her husband would take the cash out. He would sort out, and it wasn't a controlling or an unhealthy relationship at all. It was a really healthy.
Just the roles they played.
That was just their roles. That was just the way it played out. She took care of certain things, and he took care of certain things, and she'd never really taken an interest in money because it just wasn't her interest. So to be honest, she didn't know where to get the money from, how to pay bills, how to do online banking. She didn't know any of that. So already,
you see that a lot when there's a bereavement, when a partner is lost.
yeah,
You know, suddenly that role that, oh well, they used to take care of all of that.
yeah.
You know, so being dependent on each other is lovely, but also understand, you know, what it is
that you're giving up as well,
yeah,
because you're giving up a lot. So what happens at that point is, now you're not just losing or grieving over the loss of a relationship, you're now actually losing a part of yourself as well, because you now need to rediscover and reinvent yourself. So to avoid situations like that, always have a little bit of independence. And this is why that time out thing, it's not about, oh, go and find a hobby. It doesn't always need to be about a hobby. It's just about, who are you when you don't have all that clutter and noise around you? Who are you when you're not running around after children or your husband or your wife or other people in your life? That's why that time out is really, really important. But also, it's important because how will you listen to what is going on in your head if you don't give yourself any quiet time? Our brain and our heart is constantly communicating messages to us. Our body is constantly telling us things, right, that will point us in the right direction and tell us whether something is working or not. How will you hear those quiet little messages if you're not giving yourself any time away or time out from that person? So the first thing I would say is having time out and space to yourself is really, really important. The second thing you might want to do is ask yourself the question, who am I? Like, that is just write that on a piece of paper, and you will go blank for the first 3 days of this exercise.
Such a big question. You're like,
what kind of a question is this? Of course, I'm a human being, for goodness sakes. But do it and think about what naturally comes to. I mean, the number of times, right, when I'm working with people, Suzy, and I'll say, so who are you? I'm a wife and I've got 2 children. I'm a mother, I'm a father, and I'm a father of 3 children. Like, people will describe their life.
Labels.
Yeah, but they don't actually, like, but who are you? Like, are you caring? Are you loving? Are you energy? Are you like, what are, like, how would you describe that?
What are
That's
your
not
values?
ABC. Yeah, like your values and things, you know. So this is where, like, that second question about who am I is really important, right? Because it helps you just to find out who you were before all of these labels and all of these roles started being put on you, because that's all social conditioning, isn't it? It's all societal pressures. That's what that is. And the third thing you might want to do is, what are the things that are important to you? What are the values in life that are important to you as well? So if you hadn't met your partner when you did, or if you weren't in that relationship, what would you be doing at this point in time? Is it aligned with what you're already doing? Or is it completely far removed from where you are at this point in time? And these are the things that help you just discover who you are. And then obviously what you do with that information is up to you and how you want. Because remember, you don't always have to carry out these exercises to action something out, because that puts people off straight away, because they think, if I start working on myself, does that mean I have to change things? That is a separate step you can take later on when you're ready. The initial step is just to stop and start asking yourself these questions that you probably haven't had the chance to ask.
I mean, that's challenging there, what you said about what would I have been doing if I hadn't got in this relationship, because that suddenly can be like, well, I've just, you know, all my unmet dreams, desires, all these goals you might have had when you were younger, and you suddenly think, wow, I've just allowed life to pass me by. I mean, I remember that feeling in my mid-30s and just thinking, wow, I've technically achieved what you're supposed to do, you know, get relationship, nice house, good job, and here I am at mid-30s, just thinking, wow, is this it? I'm just completely unhappy. I'm miserable. It's just eat, sleep, work, repeat. And then realizing, thinking, well, what happened to all those dreams? And that can be a really kind of, I mean, it's a turning point. But what it can be is a really positive point, because you might think, okay, I had this goal when I was younger, I wanted to be this. And you think, okay, well, that's not realistic now because I've got children, I've got responsibilities, I've got, you know, I've got to look after people, that kind of thing. But it's like, okay, well, what could I do instead? So, like, for example, one of the coaches in the group, Change Your World Every Day, she was talking, one of her dreams was she wanted to move to Guatemala, and it just wasn't possible. They were a blended family, they had 5 kids together, and they had to wait until they you know, all left home and what have you, and that was going to be another sort of 5-6 years. And she thought, well, okay, I can't move there yet, but what I can do is start learning Spanish. I can start holidaying there regularly. So, you know, if you've got dreams, I don't know, if you wanted to be a dancer or what, you know, whatever it might be, can you go and do that activity? Can you start retraining? Can you do an open university course? Something that takes you towards that. Don't give up on that dream. Just because it can't be done immediately, or it might take 5 years to get there, you know, that 5 years is going to pass anyway. So don't just give up on it. You know, that time's passing anyway. So do something towards that. Don't give up on yourself and your dreams and your desires, because that's only going to lead to further resentment. The other thing I want to talk about, I know time's ticking on, we've only got about 5 more minutes, but, you know, if we do reach a point where we think, actually, this relationship is completely out of values, it has run its course, we don't have it, we've grown apart, you know, it's unrecoverable, you have made that decision, or somebody else has made that decision for you, and you find that the relationship is going to separate. How can we do that in an empowered way? You know, I don't want to use the word conscious uncoupling, because, you know,
I know, it's such a phenomenon, that word, isn't it? It's a total American concept that's come through,
well,
and it's
lovely if
to
you can
UK.
do it, but, you know, many people struggle with that, especially if it's a one-sided decision and the other person doesn't want to. So what's some tips to have a more empowered separation and respect each other where they're at, and, you know, how they may be feeling?
So I don't think I'm going to say anything new here. It'll probably just be touching on the points I've already said. So the first thing is, be respectful to one another. And if you can't be respectful, then be respectful to yourself and remove yourself from that situation. I think that's the first thing. There's so many people that try and do a breakup whilst living in the same house, right? Which is fine if you can be respectful to one another. But if there's going to be a screaming match, it's going to be shouting, it's going to be like, why are you doing this? And let's talk about this again. And the person's not respecting what you're saying, and you're not able to respect what they're wanting from you, then that breakup is just going to become so much more difficult than it needs to be. So respect each other, but also have enough self-respect for yourself as well to say, do you know what, I'm not going to put myself through this is difficult enough as it is, so I need to go and live somewhere else until this is resolved, or this other person will need to go and remove themselves and live somewhere else until this is resolved. So the first thing is, be respectful to each other, but also to yourself. The second thing is, be realistic about the expectations as well. Breakups can take a long time depending on what stages you're at as well, you know. So if you're living together and there's no shared property and no children, it can be a simple move. But if it's children involved and there's property involved and there's finance and there's combined assets involved, it's going to take you longer. So you need to be realistic about timelines, deadlines, how you're going to make the move. And that's maybe a conversation you would need to sit down with each other and talk about and think, right, so who's going to have the kids when? How are we going to do this? What's the best way to do this? Are we going to continue living, or is it better to separate? Now, obviously, having said all that, that's basically if it's an amicable split up and you've both got to that stage, because that might not always happen, which is why I made the first point about then you need to remove yourself from that situation. So the second thing is obviously being realistic about your expectations. And the third thing is, just communicate to each other again about what you're doing and why you're doing it. You know, communicate instead of that whole stonewalling thing or being passive aggressive or shutting each other out. So what you need to be mindful of is that not every breakup is a clean breakup. Some people need to have several conversations over the course of a breakup, and if that's what your relationship needs, then give it what it needs and give it the space and the time as well.
But don't be hoovered back in if you are set on, you know, getting out of that relationship.
Yeah, can I just touch on that point? Yeah. Because that's really important what you said there. Take off the rose-tinted glasses. So this happens all the time, where I basically will systematically help a woman like break through that from a toxic relationship, and then as soon as they've separated, they'll be like, oh, but I really miss the person, and like I just think that they might get better or they might change, right? That is
Doesn't.
part of your grief reaction.
Yeah.
Missing somebody,
Trauma
feeling
bonding.
guilty, feeling regretful, questioning whether the relationship, you've done the right thing or not by leaving. That is part of your reaction. You're going to feel that regardless of when you leave that relationship, right? That is not a sign that you have made a mistake. So again, be realistic. You're not just going to leave somebody and then all of a sudden disconnect your feelings from that person. You're still going to have all the same feelings that you would have if you lost somebody. So be mindful of the fact that those feelings are there because it's a natural response, not because it's a signal to go back the way. So take off those rose-tinted glasses and really focus on the reasons why you actually left in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is spot on. And I think, you know, we've barely touched on that. And I do think we do need to do another conversation about toxic relationships, because that's just a minefield, and the psychology that goes on, and the what happens when you're trying to break free of that. And just even observing you getting into a toxic relationship and how it's a slow boil effect. It doesn't happen. You don't meet somebody and they're abusive. They will be charming and lovely, and
they'll
they will
groom you into it. Yeah,
absolutely. They suck you in and you don't even realize that. So it's like the boiled frog analogy. If you ever Google it, I haven't got time to talk about. Basically, it's a boil, slowly put them in tepid water and boil them alive, and they don't realize they're being boiled. But so we will keep this conversation going. This is going to be shared on our social media channels. So if you do have questions, me and Cam will be checking in. So do put them in the comments below. If there's any topics that you would like us to cover, we're happy to do. We're going to be doing this as a regular weekly thing. We're going to be on Radio Scotland every Monday between sort of 11 and 12, I think it is, just doing our winter wellness segment. But we're happy to keep the conversation going about relationships. As I say, toxic relationships is something that affects lots of us, whether it's in the workplace, bullying behavior, you know, in our romantic relationships, and even in our friendships. I've had many friendships before my boundaries were in place that I just did not recognize were toxic until I sort of sat back
and then you go back and you're like, what was I thinking? Why did I allow them to treat me like this?
It's mind-blowing when I look back on it. I just think, gosh, I just cannot comprehend being that person anymore. But this is why I'm so passionate about personal development and therapy, because it really is life transforming. So
yeah, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Have you noticed that? Because this is where, so when I'm working with clients, right, and I say to them, this is the signs and this is the pattern this person's going to show the next time you have this conversation, they literally cannot see anything else. They're like, oh my god, I literally seen it playing out in front of me.
Like
so once you that's it. But once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And it basically, so you're going to have to do the hard work initially, but then do you know what? It pays off in the long run, because you save yourself so much extra unnecessary stress and distress later on down the line, because you'll see it coming from a mile and then you'll turn away and you'll walk in the other direction.
And it is really uncomfortable when you do see it, because you're just like, oh, why? This has been going on for ages. I've been why have I accepted this? What? And then you go into this whole sort of self-criticism that you've put up with this, and you were so stupid for not seeing it in the first place. However, that's the boiled frog syndrome. It's literally insidious.
It's very clever. These people are very clever at what they're doing, so it's not your fault.
Yeah, and they will gaslight you, which is a term I didn't even know about until 3 years ago. And now I'm just like, okay, I've seen that play out hundreds of times now that I see it. Don't even get me started on being gaslit by our government and our media. Like,
that's going to have to come in a short series of segments for you, Suzy. It's going to be like a 5-week program.
I know. We could talk. I mean, me and Cam have got a lot to say. This is why we feel so passionate about this stuff, because it really is life transforming. You know, it's just transforms people's lives, your relationships, and your health, well-being and happiness, and that's what we're all about. So thank you for everyone that's joined us. Thank you to everyone that will watch on replay. It's lovely to have you here. If you would like to have any one-to-one sessions, obviously Kamalyn is a trained therapist. She runs Key Therapies. Do look her up. And if you would like to get into a daily habit of personal development and transforming yourself, come and check us out at Change Your World Every Day. Daily coaching program with a whole wealth of coaches that you can tap into and topics. So we'll put all the details in the comments below. But thanks again, guys. Lovely to have you here, and I hope you found that useful. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.